Okay, we're learning Le'ilu Nishmas.
Mordechai Shlomo ben Shmuel.
Mordechai Shlomo ben Shmuel is a Maggid Shir in Daf Yomi in the Neshama Shav and Aliyah. The schus of the Daf he gave and schus of our Daf is Neshama Shav and Aliyah. Okay, this is kind of like the sing song of Yevamot. This parak, the parak Rabbi Gamliel. It's very intense. I don't have it. It's an intense parak, but you fill in a few blanks and things make a little more sense. You fill in a few blanks, things can make a lot of sense. So just many things that we know already. You know all the information. So if a man dies without any children, there's something called yibum. And if doesn't want to go ahead and marry her, there's something called chalitza. That's the only thing you can do with your dead brother's wife. Midaraisa, the only thing you can do is either marry her, that's yibum. Yibum is only bia, it's only having relations, not kesef, not shtar, as normal kedushin when you have three options, right? Or give a chalitza. What happens if you would go ahead, instead of living with her, you would give her kesef or kesef or shtar? Nothing. What happens if you give her a get? Nothing. Why? Because midaraisa, that does nothing whatsoever. Midaraisa, it does nothing. However, Maimer, the kesef shtar that you give to Yevamot, is similar to Yibum. It's an act of kinyan. You're acquiring. Avrami, it's not that crowded. Good. Yeah. Chalitza does the same thing that a get does. It releases one from a get, releases one from even though it doesn't work by Yevamot, but it works by Reish Ish. So because of the similarities between Maimer to Yibum and chalitza and get, the chalitza, the chacham geisa, that it has certain qualities that if they do get and or mimer, something happens. Now, what happens when you do yibum? Let's say classic yibum. What's the implication? A man has a yevama falls in front of a man, does yibum to that yevama. So for all intents and purposes, she is that no longer does any other tsarais, they all go free. None of the brothers, right? You only build one house, you don't have to build. Any other woman in the house goes free. Anyone that was married, that brother goes free. Just one. All you have to do is one. That does that yibum. In fact, also, what does yibum do? No longer does chalitza work. Once you do yibum to the girl, if you want to end the marriage, you need a get. Once you do yibum, the zika of the old brother's off, right? You're married now, and now if you go ahead, you want to get divorced, you need a get, and not chalitza. And finally, you're usher on all the relatives of that person. You'd be usher on all the relatives. That's what happens when you do yibum. What happens when you then do chalitza? So you can't do yibum anymore. Once you do chalitza, you can't do yibum anymore. And according to Rabbi Kiva, you would be usher. Chayvei lavim, you'd be usher on what to go ahead on the kroivim. Be usher on the kroivim. If you were mekadosh the kroivim, they wouldn't go ahead and be typhus. Now, what happens if you give a get? Midaraisa gets. Remember, a get does nothing. Midaraisa, a get. Let's do Maimer first. Midaraisa, Maimer does nothing. However, since it's similar to Kedushin, what it will do is, just like Yibum goes ahead and says, you're the only game in town, Maimer would say you're the only game in town. So if there are other brothers, they're out. As soon as Reuven gives Maimer to the Yevamah, the other brothers are out. That's what Maimer does. It goes ahead and asks on the other brothers, just like Yibum would go ahead and make that woman yours, so too Maimer makes the woman yours, that the other brothers can't do anything. Maimer would also create the need for a get. Since Maimer is Kedushin, the Chacham said it's not enough to give a chalitza, you'd have to do a get as well. Again, Maimer, if you do Maimer and the woman dies, so you have to do two things. You have to give if you do Maimer and now you want to get rid of her, right? You have to give a get for the Maimer and a chalitza for the original zika of the dead brother.
Chalitza is the rice and the Maimer and the get's the Rabbanan, that's why.
Correct. Again, it's right. Exactly. That's another way of saying it. But the lumdus of it was the Maimer does not take off the zika,
right.
But so you have to get rid of that. But Maimer does create a need for what for a get. But that's the Rabbanan. That's the Rabbanan. And what would a get do? A get would go ahead and would pass it to the other brothers like chalitza, and it'll be us b'kroivim. So here's the thruster of this parak is the following. First, we're going to have machlokes if there's maimer after maimer, or get after get, or yibum after yibum, which is pretty straightforward. And there's three possible scenarios. One, what mano a mano, meaning one yavama, one yavam, one woman falling to one man, or one woman falling to two men, or one woman falling to two men. Let me do before. One on one, or two women falling to one, or one woman falling to two men. Those are three scenarios that are possible, right? So in every single scenario, what we're going to do now is we're going to take the book and we're going to see what would the halacha be within the following venues. What happens if one gives maimer and the other one gives maimer? What happens if one gives maimer, one gives yibum? What does one gives maimer, one gives get? What does one gives maimer, one gives chalitza? In other words, you have the variables of get, maimer, bia, and then you have those variables in those other situations, in the three situations. It's a very long Mishnah, but we'll go through, we're going to do like we always do. Before we see the Hebrew words, we're going to look at pictures. And once we see the pictures and we get an idea of what's going on, you'll see it'll get much easier, okay? So we'll begin on page 226. We'll begin on page 226. Okay, so Rabbi Gamliel says, "Ein get acher get." What does that mean? You have two Yevamis falling to one brother. Two Yevamis are falling in front of one brother. You give a get to one. You give a get to the first brother. You give a get to the first brother, right? Ein get acher get. If you give a get to this, the first brother gives a get to the first Yevama, you give a get. The second get, says Rabbi Gamliel, does nothing. It does nothing. The first get is the get is nothing. So you would be permitted to marry the relatives of the second Sarah, because the get didn't make it usher. However, the Chachamim disagree. They say yesh get acher get, and the implication would be the Yavam would not be able to marry the kroivim of the shnia, of the second one as well. So machloek is whether the second get is valid or not. If it's not valid, you'd be mutter in her relatives. If it is valid, you would be us in her relatives. Okay. Now there's another next case. What about ein get acher get by two yevamim and one yevama? The first case was 1 and 2, one man and two women. Here we have two men and one woman. So so if the first one gives a get, the Rishon gives a get, and the Achron gives a get, so the Achron, right, would be mutter b'krayvim because it doesn't do anything. But the Chacham say yesh get acher get, and you'll be asa in the krayvim. Page 228. Rabbi Gamliel Omer v'loi maimer acher maimer. You have two yevamis l'adam echad. You're speaking about two yevamis to one man, right? Two yevamis to one man. Now, if you give maimer, right, you give the first one gives maimer. So what does that do? That creates the need for a get from the husband, and the second one gives maimer. So the second one gives maimer. If ein maimer acher maimer, then the yavam will be mutter to the second one's relatives because she would not need a get to free her because we don't consider the maimer anything. So the only maimer we consider is the first one. The second one would not be anything, and therefore you would not be mutter b'kroivim, and you would not need a get. Conversely, the Chacham say yesh maimer acher maimer. So you would need a get from both of them. And in addition, it would be asa in the relatives. Okay. Rabbi Gamliel says again, loy maimer acher maimer by two yevam is the same thing. We can skip that page 230. What about yibum after yibum? So the two women fall in front of one yavam. He's miyabim one, then he's miyabim the second one. Now we have a rule. So the second bia is not a bia. It's right. You don't need to get. Why? Because it didn't do anything. Since you were miyabim the first one, the second one obviously be machloikis, guys. Whether the second one would be an eishes achanat, again based upon machloikis between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish only in the Masechta Pashtus, but it would be it's not anything, right? Let's skip to page 232. No chalitza after chalitza. According to, again, the second chalitza. And over here, They're moida. By the deraisa dekadin, the chachamim are moida. They only argue, guys, by the derabanan dekadin. The chachamim argue by yesh maimer achamaimer, yesh ger achaget. But regarding the deraisa dekadin, whether it is a chalitza after a chalitza or a bia after bia, they don't argue because clearly the second act is nothing. Once you do a bia, it's finished. Once you do a chalitza, it's finished. Again, guys, look at me. Going through the deraisa dekadin. Once you went ahead, you have two women falling in front of one man. Once you boil this one, so you mekayim the mitzvah of yibum, nothing can be done to this one. Zero, it's out, it's off. According to everybody, chachamim agree. Once you give chalitza to this one, the chalitza afterwards does not make a difference, not kihuzeh. So what we're going to have is a scenario of a few different cases. Take a look at page 234. At page 234. Here you have one yavam falling to one yavama, one-on-one. And he does two actions. One, first he gives her a mimer, then he gives her a get. Going down the diamonds, guys. Going across. First he gives her a mimer. Now, outside, guys, what would mimer do? That's fair, guys, so look at me. The way to learn this, the best way is just, what are you supposed to do? If you gave mimer, then you should give yibum. You shouldn't give a get, no. In other words, you're giving mimer, the chachamim metakin mimer, right? So you do mimer, then you go ahead and you do yibum. That's the norm, yeah? But he didn't do that. He gave a get. Is the woman free?
No.
Why not? Because he didn't deal with the zika. Remember, the get takes care of his mimer. It doesn't, very good. It doesn't deal with the zika, so you need chalitza. So what? Look across, go across, guys. What does it say? Chalitza, right? Matzricha imen. What do you need? You need chalitza because the mimer didn't take care of the zika. You need that. Good geschmack. Now, next, what happens if he does first mimer and then chalitza outside? What would you say? Would you need a get for the mimer? He did chalitza. You need a get for the mimer. So that's what it says. It says get. You need a get. Why? The chalitza took off the zika. But what about the matak and the kedushin that as a result of the mimer? You would need a get for that. So this again, it's not complicated simply because you know all of the information. It's basically mathematics, guys. What it is four, right? And this is four scenarios and three possibilities.
Why can't the chalitza take? Why can't the chalitza take care of the mimer also?
Because there's no. Again, mimer is nothing. You don't need it to. Al pi halacha, you don't need to take care of it.
But once the chalitza is done, you
still. That's exactly what the Rabbanim attacking. You need to get. You're keeping on the din Torah. Mimer does not. Again, mimer and get do nothing by Yevamot. Only chalitza and yibum. That's it. Start off in there. So Mamela, if the chachamim attacking something, Yankel, you have to deal with it. What did they do? They made the requirement for a get. It's not pshat. You need the chalitza to take it off. There's nothing to take off.
Because I'm thinking in my head, the chalitza is more stringent than.
I know, but because you're thinking the mimer, you have to al pi halacha, you have to deal with it. Din Torah, you don't have to deal with it. Gufa, that's what the chachamim did. Because I'm going to see a gezerah in the Gemara why they did that. Next, you do a mimer, and what do you do? No, those are the three possibilities, guys. A mimer get, mimer chalitza, mimer mat, mimer bia. So now, that's what you're supposed to do. Beautiful, guys. You got it? That's what you're supposed to do. You see it? So now, look at the next scenario. What are we going to do? We're going to do mimer, get, choletz, boil, and the scenarios of, you're just going to change the variables around, right? So now, number 4, you give a get and a mimer outside. Guys, outside. If you give a get, what do you need? Right? You need chalitza, right? If you give a get, yeah. What would the get do? It would asa on all the other brothers. You're the only game in town, right? That's what the get would do. With asa on all the brothers, right? So what is the halacha? Get l'mamar. So get, you need a get you need a chalitza for the zika, and the mimer you need a get for the mimer. So get u'mimer. If you give a get, right, and then a mimer, you would need a get and chalitza. The get would not be for the mimer, and the get you gave does not take off the zika. You would need chalitza for that. 5, get u'boil. So now, if you did a bia, what the din should be, everything's good. In other words, once you boil, guys, now you can't be boiled after a get. Why? Guys, it's very important. Guys, very important. When you give a get, guys, look at me. When you give a get, for all intents and purposes, it's like you gave chalitza. You're moving yourself out of bounds. You can't do yibum anymore. You can't do yibum anymore because you gave that get. So you would think, oh, if the get doesn't count, you did bia, you should be no. You can't stay with her. So that's the halacha. Take a look. Get ubal, get lebiyasai, the chalitza l'sikasa. You can't stay together. You would need a get for the bia and a chalitza for the zika. Why can't you stay together? Because kivin shebana shelo yivna.
You gave a get, you did be, then you'd have to give another new get.
You new get, yeah, right. You need a new get for the yibum.
For the Yevamot, and
Yeah.
even the new get. for
And a
the
chalitza,
Maimer also,
what?
The first case,
No,
number 4.
Number 4,
You do get, Maimer.
mimer. So no, get mimer. You give a get is for the mimer, and the chalitza
You
is
do the get first.
yeah, but the get doesn't count for anything. How are you giving a get? Doesn't count. The get doesn't take off the zika, right?
I understand.
And
The
then you
only
do a
thing is
mimer.
chalitza. I know.
So a get can't go ahead, and you can't have an early get. You can't have a get before you marry the woman.
So why is it, so I understand the case. then.
Oh, so the case the following. Case number 4. You give a get. What does that do? It doesn't allow you to do. It doesn't allow you to do yibum. And as is on all the brothers. Now you do mimer, right?
Doesn't mean-
Well, again, so now, what would it then be? Well, let's look it up. These are 2 derabanan dekadinim. A get requires me what? That it's usher on the brothers. Mimer requires me to give a get for the mimer. So therefore, you give a get in chalitza. That's it. That's it.
Don't you get the Maimer sauce already for the brothers?
You should already usher by get. Before the mimer, the get you need a book. Yusel. Yankel, go sit next to him. Number 4, go sit next to him. Next, number 6. Get and chalitza. Oh, so now what? Guys, nothing. Zika, that's it. You broke the Zika. The get would ask you and the brothers. You didn't do a mimer, you didn't do anything. So what it didn't be. So you just give chalitza. Now, what happens if you do the right thing? Go down 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Guys, right? You all did the right thing first. You did chalitza, bia, and whatever you did afterwards is irrelevant. You know why? Once this chalitza, there's nothing to be done. Adrab, you did averis. You did averis, but there's no requirement to release anything. The chalitza broke the zika, and the bia when it had you and she's your wife. Okay, so the mimer after the bia doesn't count. The get doesn't count. You don't need a chalitza or anything. What?
Why doesn't the get count?
Because you're not giving a get for the you're giving a get for the you right. You're not giving a get for the marriage. In other words, it does count. You're divorced, but yet you could take her back. If you look what he says over there, however, okay, and bol chalatz, the chalitza is not anything because once you did that, okay. Now the next these scenarios, guys, if you take a look, are going to play themselves out. They're going to play themselves out in 3 scenarios. We did the first one, 1-on-1. The second one is 2 Yevamis to 1 man, and the third one is 2 men to 1 Yevama. So let's go down the line, guys. Again, now we have 16. We have Maimer, Get, Chalitza, Baal, and each one of those, right, double up. So the first one is Maimer, going across. Maimer, the first brother, you have two Yevamis and 1 man. So 2 Yevamis falling from 1 brother. Reuven's married to 2 women. And Reuven dies, and it falls to what? To Shimon. So Shimon has 2 women falling in front of him. Shimon gives Maimer to both of them. The din is they both require get. You would be usher in the krivim, okay? And the din of the Yevama Shniya, would need a get, vas b'krivim. According to Rabbi Cleo, you don't need to get them with the B'Kraveh because ein Maimer acha Maimer. And after you go ahead and give a get for the Maimer, you need a Chalitza to free. Whichever one you give Chalitza to, it doesn't make a difference. Guys, remember, if 2 women are falling from 1 house, all you have to do is free to Chalitza or even to one of the women. So you did 2 Maimarim over here. The 2 Maimarim require you to give a get. You will be also on the Krayvim according to Chachamim because Yesh Maimer acha Maimer. Like Rabbi Gamliel, you'll be mutter on the second half because Eiman Achamaimer. However, you still will need Chalitza to get rid of the Zika. Because again, if you don't, only Yibum Chalitza can get rid of Zika, not Maimer. Good? It's a little complicated, but again, once the side is there, it's all in front of you. Next scenario would be number 2, would be Maimer and get. So 2 women, the first one you give mimer to, the second one you give a get to. So now you need a get for the mimer, good. And the one who gives the get will be also b'krei v'seha, and you need chalitza, right? You need chalitza to break the zika. You'll always need chalitza to break the zika. Next, mimer chalatz. So now you need a get for the mimer, right? Okay, mimer ball. You need a get. You need a get for the mimer. You need a get for the bia. Why can't you stay together? Because it's usher afterwards. Once you give a mimer, it asks you on the other woman. Right. It's a bia psula, guys. It's a bia psula. So it's a bia psula. That's why you need to get both, and you need a chalitza to release, guys. One more time. Number 3, the reason why the bia doesn't work over there. Once you gave mimer already, it asked it on it made the only game in town that woman. That woman is the only one you can kind of mitzvah for. It asked the other Yevamot. So you can't, if you do yibum to the other Yevamot, it's a bia psula, and therefore you would need a get for it. And the chalitza to ultimately break the zika. Number 4, mimer and chalitza.
He has to give it. He already gave a get to one.
He has to give a get for both, one for the mimer and one for the second one. Either one, anyone. Again, chalitza, anyone, any which one, it doesn't make a difference. Any which one. Next, mimer chalatz. So you need a get for the mimer. Right? You be also b'kroivim, right? The one who did the mimer, and the one who did chalitza, you're good. Because after chalitza, you don't need anything. How are we doing? Good? Okay, the next scenario, get. Okay, 2 gittin. All we do is aser krei v'seha. That's what a get does. And then you just need chalitza. Get in baal. You need be aser krei v'machmas to get. You need again, the bia is not a good bia. Again, the get, same thing. Whether you give a mimer to the one or a get to the other, it makes them the only game in town and asks it on you, right? So the other woman would be aser. Therefore, you need a get. And chalitza is what is the final thing that you debate the zika. Get a mimer. Also because of the get, you need to get on the mimer, and you need to get it for the mimer and chalitza. Make sense? Again, you see, it just goes across the same thing. It's very repetitious. Get in chalatz, so we us on the kroivim, right? And the chalitza would go ahead and matter. Chalitza would matter. Okay, now chalitza. So basically, you're home free, correct? Now, okay. So the first case, chalitza and chalitza. The second one would be asa b'krei v'seha. Right? The first one would be asa the kroivim, because you gave chalitza, but ein chalitza acha chalitza, because guys remember, the chachama moida ein chalitza and chalitza and yib machiyibum. So the second one did nothing. So take a look. The second one will be mutter in the kroivim. In other words, once you give chalitza, basically, what did you do? The one you gave it to is free. You can't marry the kroivim. If now you go do something to that second one, it's nothing. Whatever you're doing to that second one is nothing. Therefore, you'll be mutter b'kroivim. Chalitzu maimer, the chalitzu would make asa b'kroivim. Now, the maimer would go ahead and be mutter b'kroivim. Why? Because once you give chalitza, the action afterwards nothing. Same thing, same halacha. Chalitza and get, same thing. The get doesn't do anything. Chalitza ball, same thing. Guys, that's it. Once you give chalitza, nothing afterwards, no matter what it is. 13, 14, 15, and 16. Same halacha will be by bia, right? Once you do bia, you'll be the first one would be able to keep her because he did the halacha, mutter l'kaima. The second one would be mutter to kroivim because it's nothing, and there's nothing else to do after that. But see, from 9 to 16 is easy, guys. Once you do chalitza, ain't acha chalitza, right? Or yibum, and 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, that's the halacha by what? By 2 yavamis and 1 yavam. What's the halacha by 2 girls and 2 men and 1 yavam? 2 men and 1 yavam. Okay, so let's go down. We're going to do this. Maima. Again, you need to get the first one. You have need to get from the first one, and it would be asa b'krei v'seha. And according to Gamliel, it would be mutter. Why? Because ein get acha get, ein maimer acha maimer, and the chalitza to take off the zika. Maimer beget. You need a get, maimer bol, you need a get, basically, okay. Get. Again, the problem, these are all the problems. Get. The first guy would be asa in the kroivim. The second one would be asa, in get acha get, according to will be mutter, according to chamasa. Boil, we need a get, a bia for the get. Mimer, you need a bia for the get, for the mimer. Cholatz, then you're home free. The first one would be asa, and the second one would be asa because that's the chalitza, and ein acha chalitza klum. Cholatz, bol, all those. The first one is asa, the second one's muta, and them's the apples. Okay. Okay, just one more. Okay, we'll wait. We'll get to 2:30. We'll get to that. Okay, this is basically the Mishnah. So can anyone repeat it by heart to me? But you understand, guys. Here's what it is. It's three scenarios. It's the scenario of get, mimer, bia, chalitza. The two deraisas being chalitza and yibum. The two derabanan being mimer and get. They don't count for anything, those two, except the gezeres that ask the krivim. And whether you hold yesh get acha get or imachar mimer, that machloikus would depend on what the halacha is going to be. I think Bez Hashem, hopefully it becomes clearer as we go through the Gemara. I know again, it's not easy, but it's not as hard as people say. Rabbi Gamliel loimer, says Gamliel, ein get acha get, meaning the second get does not count for anything. The second get doesn't count. You go ahead, you give the first get. It asks bekroivim. The second one does not count for anything. Not mimer after mimer also doesn't count. Bila acha bila, a yibum after a yibum. Chalitza acha chalitza. The chachamim maimer no. Yesh get acha get. There is. Yesh mimer acha mimer. Guys, be'emes a get does nothing. A mimer does nothing because they're rabbanon. However, aval loy acha bila, loy acha chalitza klum. They agree that if after a bia there's no other bia, after chalitza there's no other chalitza. That's the only game in town, and that would be okay. Ketzad. Now this ketzad is not going back on what we said. This ketzad, if you look at Rashi, guys, where it gets wide, not super wide, medium wide, 4 lines down. Ketzad. Loya pluk the koi. It's not going to machloikis between Rabbi Gamliel and the Chachamim whether there's a get after another get. Elamil sababi nafshehi. It's something else. It's going on one-on-one, mano a mano, one-on-one. What's the din of Yava v'Yamama regarding these scenarios? But it's not going back on the machloikis between Rabbi Gamliel and the Chachamim. Good? Ketzad. Asa maimer b'yavimtai. If a man has a Yevama, he gives a what? He gives a maimer. Now what does that mean? Guys, what does that mean? Clear? You're going to need a get. You're going to need a get, and what? And it's going to make that he's the only game in town. The brothers cannot go ahead and deal with, right? The brothers can't do anything. V'nasan lo get, and now you go ahead and give a get. She's not free. Tzrichim and a chalitza. You're going to need chalitza. Why? Because mimer doesn't do anything vis-a-vis the zika. The zika can only be taken off with chalitza. Very good. Right? Now, why can't you do yibum? Why can't you do yibum once you gave a get? Because kiven shelo yivna shuvlei boina. Since you didn't go ahead and do it, you get a one-shot deal. Since you didn't. Asa maimer v'chalitza. Again, you do first mimer, guys. First mimer, then chalitza. So, no, the zika is off, but you need a get for the mimer. Good. What's the din? Tzrichim menu get. Good. Next. Asa maimer ubal. What's the halacha? Harizek mitzvasa. That's it. That's perfect. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. Give kesef kedushim what we call maimer and then be boil. Good. Next. Nasan get v'asa maimer. You give a get and then you make a mimer. What does that mean? You didn't take off a zika. You did the two derabanan things, guys. You did a get, which will also be bekroivim. It made you the only game in town. You gave a mimer. So now, tzricha get v'chalitza. You would need a get for the what? A second get for the mimer. And you need chalitza to break the zika. Good. Nasan get ubol. Now you give a get and you do bia. Now this bia is a bia psula, correct? Why? Because once you gave the get, that's it. That's it. You have this of shula yivna. So nasan get uboil, tzricha get. You would require a get for what? For the bia, the chalitza for the zika. Because again, the bia, even though usually is normally good, it won't be enough to take off the zika since it was a zika psula. makes sense. It fits. I'm telling you guys, good. I think it's very geschmack. Huh? Good. Now, nosen get the cholatz. Let's say you gave a get and you gave chalitza. Good. What's the din? 101, home free. Done. Ein acha chalitza klum. Guys, good. My fits. I told you, it all fits. Next. Choletz v'asa maimer. You did chalitza, you gave maimer. Or you gave chalitza v'nasan get. Or you did chalitza u'boil. Good. Or boil v'asa maimer. Or boil v'nasan get. Or boil v'cholatz. Einacha chalitza klum. And Rashi adds ve'einacha bia klum. Guys, that's scenario. That's scenarios 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's on page 235. That's once you give chalitza, you're home free. I don't care what you do afterwards, you're home free. Once you do the bia, you're home free. But that's Baruch Hashem. You have to battle to do these gemaras is not learning it, is how to give it over that you should understand it. And I thank this person every day. Right? I thank this person every day for this book. This is it's unbelievable. Huh?
Did good.
He did good. Okay, now achas yevama v'achas liva, achas yevama, achas livama echad. This is all what, whether it's one-on-one, right? If achas shtei yevama is liyavam echad, or whether it's two women to one man. Two women to one man. Now, Ketzad, what's the case of two yevamas to one man? We're going to go through the same Gemara, except it's going to be picture on page 236. And again, you know it already. We're just going to figure it out. We're going to plug it in, and you're totally good. Right. Ketzad. Asa maima bezu. Again, there's two women falling to one man. Asa maima bezu, you would need two gittin and a chalitza, right? Because maima is not going to take it off. Maima bezu v'get bezu. So what are you going to need? A get for the maimer and a chalitza for the zika. So you could get for chalitza. We're getting good at this. Maima bezu uboil. Right? You do a maim for one and you boil the other. Now this is a bia psula, because once again, it's two women in one house are like one woman. It's bias echad who boina, right? So despite the fact that two women, once you went ahead and gave maimer to one, that maimer is the only game in town now. The other one is not. So when you did a bia to the other one, it doesn't count. It can't take off the zika. So what are you going to need? Tzrichas beis gittin. One for the maimer, one for the yibum, the chalitza, because the bia psula can break the zika, despite the fact it is yibum. Despite the fact that it's yibum, it could not break what? The zika. Maima bezu v'cholatz bezu. Okay, we did one good thing over here, right? So the first one would need a get, and the second one goes free, right? Let's see. Zu maima bezu v'cholatz bezu. Harishon tzricha get. Very good. Yes. Get lezu v'get lezu. What would that mean? You need one chalitza, right? Tzrichas and chalitza. There you go. We got it. You need one chalitza. Get lezu, boil lezu. If one does a get, now you can't do a bia, because once you do a get, what does that create? Kima shaloi bana shaloi yivna. So tzricha get, you'll need a get for the bia, the chalitza, because to break the zika. Get lezu u'maimer bezu. Let's say you give a get to one and maimer to the other, so you did two durabanan things. So now you have a need for a get and for chalitza. So you could get for the maimer, the chalitza for the zika. Get lezu v'choletz lezu. So you only have to deal with the get, right? The only chalitza, you're nothing, you're finished. Get lezu v'choletz lezu. What are you going to do? So you also deprive him, right? However, einacha chalitza klum, there's nothing left to do. You're free what because of the chalitza. Now, this is very easy. Once the first action is chalitza, guys, you're home free, right? So now, chalatz v'chalatz, oy chalatz v'yasa maimer, oy chalatz v'nasan get, oy chalatz v'boil, or boil u'boil, or boil v'asa maimer, or boil v'nasan get, or boil v'chalatz, einacha chalitza klum, v'einacha bia klum, right? Once that's 13, 14, 15, that's geschmack? Very geschmack. Okay, now, bein biyav mechad, l'shtei yevamos, now we're going to go through the scenario, the final scenario of one woman falling to two men. Until now, what we had one-on-one, then we had two women to one man. Now we're going to have one woman to two men. Okay, now. Yes, That's what I said. Chalitz v'asa maimer. You did chalitza or you gave a maimer. Oy chalitz v'nasan get. Oy chalitz v'boil. Oy chalitz. Oy boil v'asa maimer. Oy boil v'nasan get. Oy boil v'chalatz. Einacha chalitza klum and einacha bia klum. Now let's just finish the final chapter, which we didn't do. Page 238. Page 238. So the words of the Gemara is Ein achak chalitza klum bein betchila bein bein emtza bein besof. Ein achak chalitza klum. There's nothing after chalitza, whether the chalitza took place in the middle, the beginning, or the end. So, for example, you have a yavam. What does he do? He first does a chalitza. His first ma'aseh is chalitza, betchila, going across. So he does chalitza bezu. He does two chalitzas. That doesn't make a difference. Einacha chalitza kum, right?
How many women?
I think there's only one more. I think it must be two yavam asli to one yavama. He gives a double chalitza. Doesn't make a difference. If he gives first, he gives a get, and then he gives a chalitza. Then he gives what? Then asabah beila chalitza. Nothing. Einacha chalitza kum. Does chalitza? Does a maima? Does a get? Einacha chalitza kum. Same thing by bia. First he gives the bia, and there's afterwards nothing. Bia, then a get, then a bia, then a mimer, nothing. The whole thing is what? Bia besoif, get l'zu, mimer l'zu, because of boil. So this is a very complicated.
Just go to what's right before you.
But bila's bia, ubaila balas mimer tzricha get. Okay, this is complicated. But let's see it inside. This is very, let's see inside the chart. Let's do the chart the right way. Yeah, now let's say bia betchila. That's the first one. That's bia betchila, bia emsa bila b'saif. Now the first one. So bia he does first. So there should be no nafkamina. Whatever he does afterwards doesn't make a difference. Ein nafkamina mashnasa acha bia betchila. Ein nafkamina mashnasa betchila. Ein acha bia klum v'lei boy chalitz. You know the chalitz. Now, what happens if the bia comes in the middle? What does that mean? First he did a get. And then he was boilha.
Second one.
And then he gave mimer to the third one. So what's the halacha? The one he gave bia to and the balas mimer would need a get, and he'd be usher on all of them when they're kroivim. One of them would need chalitza to pata all of them. Reb Nechemya says the balas bia, it's enough love a get, and you don't need a mimer afterwards. We'll meet him in a second. The final scenario, get lezu, maima lezu. You gave a get first to the first yavama, you did a maima to the second yavama, and you boiled the third leva, right? The third one. So the balas bia that you will boil, and the maima will need a get, and you'll be asr in their krivim. You need chalitza to one of them, and that would free him up. So let's see it inside.
When the mimer doesn't need it, it's a get.
Yeah, it just needs a get. That's all you can do. So now, okay. So let's say first you did chalitza and afterwards you did mimer. Whether you did chalitza in the middle, let's say you gave a get first, then you did chalitza, and then you did a bia, or you gave mimer. Ubein b'soif, that you gave mimer in the beginning, then you gave a get, and then you gave chalitza. Einach chalitza klum. And yachsa b'yasaboy over chayrasa mimer ain't typhus klum. Ain't it's get k'dilaf giyasa mimer. In other words, you don't need anything. However, be'ila, you don't need after. Bia is not chalitza. Chalitza einach chalitza klum. That was the first chart, guys. That was the first chart. As long as you did a chalitza, einach chalitza klum, right? Therefore, the first chart at the end of it, no matter what you did in the beginning, if you did a chalitza, you're good, you're free. However, bia is not like that. So now here's the din of bia. V'bila bismanchi betchila. Once it's the first thing, einach klum. There's nothing afterwards. Be'emtza, you have to deal with the thing you did before. Let's say you gave a get first, and then you did a bia, and then you did a mimer. Or in the end, let's say you gave a get and mimer first, and then the bia. Then you have after baila klum. Then you have to go ahead and deal with the halachas, and that's the chart what we did. Rabbi Nechemya says no. Achas, whether it bia, achas chalitza, bein betchila, bein emtza b'sof, we don't care. in achrei klum. Even after the bia, no matter what happens at the end, one of the Yevamis gets a bia, you're home free. That's what it says. Okay, going back to the Gemara and going back to the Mishnah, we had a machlokes in the Mishnah between the Chachamim and Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel said, "Ein get achaget, ve'im achamaimer," right? And he said that there was no get after get, there was no mimer after mimer, and the Chacham said, "Yesh get achaget, yesh mimer achamaimer." However, the Chacham moida that ein bia achabia, ein chalitza achachalitza. Okay, so let's go through it again. Ein get achaget, meaning so the second one you be mutter the kroivim on the second yavama. Good. Ein mimer achamaimer, you would not need a get for the second mimer, and you'll be mutter in the kroivim. The Chacham disagree. They say that you'll be awesome in the second one, and the second and the mimer you need a get for the second one, you'll be awesome in the kroivim. And the Chacham moida that what yesh ein bia achabia. Once you do yibam first, that's it. And chalitza chalitza. Once you do chalitza first, that's it. Okay, those were the two dinim. Those were the two dinim. Okay, so says the Gemara. Fred the Gemara. Ad kan le pligi. The Regamliel the Chacham didn't argue. Ella beget achaget umayma achamaimer. Avol beget acha echad miyavama umayma echad biyavama mahani. If you could do a get in one of the yavamis and a maim in the other yavamis, the get would help to asa that mishon lo yivna, that you won't be able to go ahead and do yibum, and the maim would help that what you need a get. To go ahead, you need a get. They only argue ela beget acha get. In other words, what's the diak? They only said get acha get or maima acha maimer. What about get after maimer? What about you would give a get and then you give a maimer? Then there's no machlokes. The get would ask the kroivim, and the maimer would require a get, because they only are the maimer get. They didn't deal with what get maimer, right? Says the Gemara, my timer. Says the Gemara explains. My timer Rabbanon should get biyavama mahani. Why does it get biyavama help to asa all the brothers? In other words, all the brothers in Mutta, midoraisa, guys. Midoraisa, what's the din? You go ahead, you give Yevama a get. What's the din? Nothing. You did nothing. All you could do is chalitza. But the Chacham said, if you give a get to this one, you can't do yibum anymore, and you're also with kroivim. Good. Why? Why is that? My time Rabbanon. What's the reason Rabbanon said that you get by Yevama mahani to asa that what that you you only need chalitza. So says Gemara mishum dahani ba'alma, because the get does help to asa kroivim in the world. If you go ahead and give a get, it does work. So therefore, since it does work, they were matakin even by Yevama where it doesn't work. They were matakin up to the rest of the world. The i'amrit loy mahani. If you're going to say a get doesn't do anything like Yevama, right? Amri, people are going to say, 1 second, get lahaitzi v'chalitz lahaitzi. They both go ahead and do the same thing. They're both mattering a woman who had previously be asar, a woman in Eishes because of kedushin, and a Yevama l'shuk because why? The zika of the dead husband. Now, the get loy mahani. If you're going to tell me a get doesn't help the asar, right? They'll say also chalitza nami loy mahani for asar l'nivel acha chalitza, and you may come to do be after chalitza. So therefore, they said to get asses, even though a get did nothing. So you should be able to do yibum afterwards. What might happen? You'll go ahead, you'll give chalitza, you'll say, what? Chalitza is like a get. They both universally, they get rid of. So if you're able to do a bia after the get, you should not come to a bia after chalitza. Bia after chalitza, you're in bad shape. That you can't do. Well, my time Rabbanon, Maima biyavama mahani, that you need a get, that's us to take her in. Mishum dahama alma. Because in a non-Yevama situation, Kiddushin works. Kesef and Shtar both work. The Amir loy mahani, what are you going to tell me? You give Kesef Kiddushin to a Yevama and it doesn't help. Army people are going to say, Maima liknois, Ubia liknois. Maima is to require and Bia is to acquire. When the Ma'aimer like mahani, Bia also like mahani, Biasi l'mivel acha Bia. Right? And be over an Issa deraisa. You might come to boil after what? After Bia. Because we know, so therefore it doesn't. Well, my time on Rabbanon, Bia psula, Let's say bia psula. You gave a get, and then you did a bia. That's a bia psula. Sheish achreha klum. That it doesn't matter that you need a get. That's not matter only with a get that you need even chalitza. So Amri, bia acha get he. If there's a bia after the get, let's say you did a bia after the get was given. Bia acha get mishum bia acha chalitza. That you shouldn't go ahead and be boiled after chalitza because after chalitza, you're gone. The bia acha maimahi, and if the bia is after the maimer, gezerah bia acha maimer mishum bia acha bia, because you're going to be geyser what you may come to do bia acha bia, which we know would not be permitted. My time on Rabbanan high chalitza psula that you gave a maimer or a get that you can't go ahead and be boiled. Ein achreha klum. If you go in Mekadosh afterwards, it's not typhus that you don't need to get. Army, they'll say, what's the reason? My ligzer, what's the gezer you're gonna make over here? What's the gezer? Again, one more time. My time the Rabbanan also Rabbanan high chalitza psula. You gave maimer or a get, and then once you give maimer a get, there's nothing you can do about it. And even if you Mekadosh afterwards, it's not typhus, and what? It doesn't. Amri, what are you going to say is going to happen? What are you worried about? Nigza chalitza acha get mishum chalitza acha chalitza. Right? There's no reason in the world you can give chalitza as much as you want. Kolki hani tachlis v'teza. Let him do chalitza constantly. Who cares? What are you going to be geyser chalitza acha maimer, right? Mishum chalitza acha bia. Right? You can say after chalitza after maimer because chalitza after bia. What are you worried about? Even after that, it doesn't make a difference. You still need to get from Mamaroi. Why? Because chalitza achas bia nami boy get lebiyasai. That chalitza achar bia nami you would need get for its bia. Nonetheless, you would need it. So therefore, there's nothing to worry about. Sorry. Have a good evening.
Good, thank you.